Up next, the co-writer and co-founder of a classic rock supergroup tells us the story behind their signature hit from 1982. He came from a group that had just made visual music history via MTV the year before that. The exclusive interview you're not going to want to miss. It's next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies. Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. If you're a passionate music fan, you're going to want to subscribe to our community below. We'd love to have you. Also, hit us up on Patreon for more content. You can do that at the link below as well. Now, I'm excited to bring you another episode from our series, Revelations, where featured artists reveal rare stories about their biggest songs, along with fascinating insight about their careers. Now, on this installment of Revelations, really psyched to bring you episode 1 of our recent Zoom session with Geoff Downes, the brilliant songwriter and instrumentalist who has been part of so many groups, BUGGLES, Yes, and of course, the 80s supergroup Asia. Geoff Downes and the lead singer of Asia, the late John Wetton, wrote some phenomenal songs, including the classic rock opus Heat of the Moment. And here Geoff T tells the story behind this top 5 hit from the summer of '82. It also hit number 1 on the rock charts for 6 weeks, and it helped Asia's debut record sell nearly 5 million units in the US alone. It was such a big record and such a memorable album cover as well. Now, before we get into the interview, you might have noticed that I'm wearing brand new glasses, which I got from Zenni Eyewear. Zenni creates eyewear for everyone, and I absolutely love their variety. I have 5 pairs of these already, different colors, different shapes. I can go from an Elvis Costello look to Buddy Holly anytime. I also had them customize it with Professor of Rock on the side. I put a little music note, and you can put a message on the inside. I had them put 3 chords in the truth. Best part is they're very low in price, yet high on quality. Click on the link below to get a pair. Be sure to check out their sunglasses. They do those, and blue light blockers as well. Here's Geoff Downes with the story of Heat of the Moment on Revelations. The debut of Asia was just so massive. My parents had the record. I bought the tape. That was like one of those records that parents bought and kids bought that I remember in the 80s. The only other band I can think of that was like that was like maybe Journey, where it was something that the kids loved and the parents loved. And that's very unique.
Yeah, I think it reached out to a wide section of people. I think mainly because, there was a sort of intelligent element to the music, so it wasn't just a kind of a straight ahead rock, but also it had, the roots in the classic rock roots at that point, or prog as it's more known as now, but at the same time it had a very kind of rocky and poppy edge to it. So it was a bit of a hybrid in that respect, and I think that it just kind of fell in the crack at the right time. And so I think we were very lucky. We worked very hard on that album. I think a lot of people don't realize that we actually, we got on very well together in the initial period, and we rehearsed for about 6 months before we even went into the studio. So
wow.
It wasn't just a kind of thing that some record executive assembled on a test bed. This was a real band, and of course my great fortune was actually starting to work with John Wetton and realizing that we really had a very, very strong songwriting connection together. And I think that was the sort of foundation for a lot of what happened with Asia, that we had some really big tunes behind us, and then we could throw into the mix with the band. So I was very, very grateful to go from working with, in the space of 3 years or, thereabouts, of working with, the bass player Trevor Hall and the bass player Chris Squire and the bass player John Wetton, and of course, each making massive contributory songs together. So that was, I kind of, made it 3 out of 3 really, which was pretty fortunate.
3 out of 3, not bad. Well, I mean, this debut, it sold almost 5 million units just in the U.S., which incredible. This was at the time when the Blockbuster album started to really catch on. 82 to 87 was probably the biggest moment for that, all these huge albums coming out. But the group was built around Wetton and was primarily the brainchild of John Kolodner at Geffen Records. Is that right?
Yeah, John Kolodner was very institutional in getting it together. I mean, I think that more so in the latter stages of our rehearsals, because initially Richard Branson wanted to sign us to the Virgin label, but I think that Kolodner was so interested that he made a big point of making us the first signing to Geffen Records, which was of a band anyway, because I think he had a point to prove. He moved there from wherever he was before, Atlantic or somewhere, and he felt that, you know, this was his baby that was going to crack it.
Well, let's talk about Heat of the Moment. Incredible song. I remember the first time I heard it as a kid and just being blown away. This was at the moment where I was discovering music that was my own, not just what I was hearing my parents play those records, but when I was listening to the radio and choosing what I wanted to listen to and using my own allowance to buy my music. This was a song that just blew me away. Of course, John Wetton, we would talk about, whose brilliance as a songwriter really at that point was untapped. He had a rough draft of the song. Tell me about that.
Yeah, he had a rough draft as a country song. And so it was actually in a kind of almost like a country folk song. I never meant to be so bad. And I think when we got together, I had a verse idea for him, and so that's when we started to straighten it out. Mm-hmm. And it really started, I think that by that time we'd written a few songs together already. I think we'd done Wildest Dreams, Soul Survivor, and Only Time Will Tell. So we had a bit of a formula, we had a bit of a system we were working on, whereby I'd give John, you know, a verse, and he'd say, I've got a chorus that goes with that. And that's how we literally just operated, that we put, you know, one idea that I got and one idea he got, and just literally joined them together. And that was a start of writing that, you know, it was a formula that worked for us. And so we followed that really through, you know, up until the time that he sadly passed in 2016. So, you know, all the songs that we wrote together were loosely based on those very early Asia songs that we put together.
He'd been working on it for a few years as he was still a member of Wishbone Ash, and always read that he was pouring out his heart to his girlfriend at that time. What were the things you wanted for yourself? Is that how you understand it?
Yeah, I think so. I think that I know the John song, you know, his lyrics were about personal experiences and, you know, with girlfriends and that kind of thing. But he never wanted to make it too much of a heavy connection. So it was always a much more sort of metaphysical view of writing a song, rather than, you know, this is my personal experience and I'm telling it to you. I think it was just something that was inspired him to write the songs in that way. So you know, it's like You're Leaving Now, Only Time Will Tell. You know, they was. I think there's the part of the success of Asia's songs were that, but people could really relate to them. You know, normal, you know, a lot of people's relationships and that kind of thing. They really struck a chord, you know, with a lot of people, and I think that's why we were saying earlier that, you know, it jumped across generations, because everyone had kind of experienced stuff like that.
He was fashioning the song in a lyrical style similar to Joni Mitchell, which is one of his favorite lyricists. Don't it always seem to go? You don't know what you've got till it's...
That's right. Yeah.
Heat of the Moment, what's interesting, it had a different time signature on Wetton's early demo than the version that you recorded. Like you said, it was like a country song. Tell us about how the song evolved.
Well, I had a verse part that was actually in 6/4.
And now you find yourself in 82.
So it's sort of unusual for a pop record to be in anything other than 4/4. Generally speaking, I mean, you've got things like, I think something Salisbury Hills in 7.
Grab your things, I'm going to take you home.
I think that the very first Jethro Tull song was in 5. It wasn't that common for songs to be an unusual thing. So obviously it squares off to 4/4 when it hits the chorus, but then it breaks back into 6/4 when it hits the verse. So it's a sort of a fairly unusual approach, but I think it really helped the song flow. You know, I think that it was all based on a kind of I think they call it the iambic pentameter. So you know, it's that's how it we approached it.
Wanted to ask you about the bridge in Heat of the Moment, that very complex middle 8 section. So I understand that Steve Howe wasn't too keen on playing the big power chord to open the song. Tell me about those two things, about the middle section, that middle 8, and then what you remember about the big power chord.
Well, I think that, we John and I had envisaged it with this very heavy intro, which was pretty much based on the verse. We don't always say we insisted on it, but I think we managed to convince Steve that this was the way it should go. So Steve said, "Oh, well, I don't want to just do a basic power chord." So he got, I think it was a high-tuned Gibson. I think he called it an F Gibson or something. So it was higher tuned than a normal one, and he used that. So it's a very bright high-end power chords rather than like sort of the old low power chords. These were like high, and I think that that kind of sold him on doing it that way. And the middle section. Steve wanted to put a koto on it, and so we played similar lines. We did a unison line where he did a koto and I added a Selena string ensemble. So, and then of course I got Mellotron choir in the background and Fairlight choir underneath it all, and John's hitting a low Taurus pedal. So it's kind of it's a sort of explosion of highs and lows. That was something that I think pretty much I came up with towards the end of it when John and I decided that we need to get some kind of a bridge in there.
Heat of the Moment was the last song recorded for the debut album and was a bit of an experiment. Is that right? Tell me about that.
Well, I think John and I were sure, but I don't think the other guys were too sure. And then I think that once we started getting into to recording it, Ludner would come in and, have you got one more in you, as a lead-off single? Because I think otherwise they would have led with Only Time Will Tell. So it was very much, at the end of the recording, it was the last track we recorded for the album. And it just all started falling into place. Carl started playing that sort of Phil Spector pattern in the first verse with a big echo tambourine on there and stuff. And it motors along as a song. So it's a kind of, it's about as poppy as we got on that album, I think. But at the same time, it's got a kind of it's got integrity as well.
For sure. Well, and the chorus, so incredible. I love the harmonies and how you put all that together. What do you remember about that?
I think we had mainly a system of John doing 2 harmony parts in the middle, and Steve doing one on the bottom one, and me doing one on top. So we had this kind of 4-part block. Pretty much the way we did most of our harmony stuff, and so we had this block going, and so John would then probably one of the voices was also the lead voice, one of John's voices, so that would come to prominence, and so our voices would be kind of stacked behind it. So it gave this, again, John was a church, brought up in churches as well, so we had a lot of influence of arranging the vocals with our kind of approach to English church music and anthems that we sung as kids. So they're very, very, there's no blues in them. All our harmonies were very, very kind of static blocks that moved like that.
Well, after you shaped up the song and you finished the recording, you had to know that it was a hit. What were your expectations when it came out as the first single?
I don't think we had any expectations that the album was going to be anything like as big as it was. I think that we knew that Geoffy were behind it. It was their first band release. The radio pluggers that they had working for them and all the publicists, they were very much into it. So we knew we had a good chance of selling a few copies at least. We had a fairly college tour of America lined up. I was really based on the strength of, who was associated with the bands, and, King Crimson and the ELP and Yes. So it was really, the tour was set up on the basis that this was featuring members of those groups. But I think by the time the record came out and started to fly up the charts, it became apparent that, it was more to do with this new band than it was to do with the guys' roots.
For sure. Well, number 4 on the Billboard Hot 100, number 4 in Canada, and then spent 6 non-consecutive weeks at number 1 on the Billboard Mainstream Rock chart as well. A huge rock song, so it crossed over. This was a song, and this album was just so massive. I mean, for my generation, the kids that I grew up with, it was just one of those albums that we all had. We talked about at school. I remember having a discussion with friends about who is better, Journey or Asia, and started those discussions. It was a lot of fun. For you to be able to go from a huge new wave band like the BUGGLES to a band that was a huge rock band, and then, yes, progressive, within a couple of years, that's a huge transition.
Yeah, it was almost sort of like everything. I went from one extreme to another. But I suppose at the same time, I got a taste for the live stuff with Yes. That was very important. And so the opportunity to be in a new band that I was going to be a founding member of, was probably a sort of dream come true, really. And the fact that I'd be a principal writer in that band as well. So, it all fell into place, really. And I think, the first Asia album is a very, very special album to me.
Well, in the heat of the moment, the video was directed by Godley and Cream from 10cc fame, and they were huge directors at the time. I mean, Every Breath You Take and a lot of the videos that they were doing were like the iconic videos of that time. What do you remember about the video? I
remember we shot both videos in the same day. So I think we did Heat of the Moment in the morning and Only Time Will Tell in the afternoon, or maybe they were actually consecutive days.
Wow.
But, it was, the actual video was not really that special because I think it was just shots of us playing. And, we set up in a rehearsal room and they filmed us playing. And then the rest of it, was cut in with the actors who came in and the spinning globe and all the rest of it. So they were very creative pair. I mean, I knew them quite well before anyway. So because they were, as I've said before, the scene around London was very small. I bumped into Kevin Godley quite a few times. So, but yeah, the Only Time Will Tell video was a bit more in depth, but it was nothing like the intensity that we did with, say, Video Kill the Radio Star, which had, it had us all in so many different positions and roles. It was more of a performance video that was then edited and added to.
Well, it's, again, one of the biggest rock songs of the 80s, and it's been used a lot in pop culture. I don't know if you ever saw on South Park where Cartman sings it for Kenny.
Yeah, I did, yeah. That was cool.
One thing I said that I would never do.
One look from you and I would fall from grace.
And that would wipe the smile right from my face.
Do you remember when we used to dance?
Yeah, and then, of course, 40-Year-Old Virgin.
Oh, yeah.
Matador, It's been in a few. I mean, it still keeps getting a considerable amount of requests for it, which is great. To have even just one song that does that for you. But I've got a few.
Hey, thanks for watching. Leave us a comment about Geoff, Asia, and this amazing song. Share your memories about this song. Now, to get Asia and Geoff's music, hit our Amazon links below. If you dig this content, we'd love to have you subscribe. Hit the bell so you can be aware of our new content. And grab a pair of Zenny glasses. Check us out on Patreon. Help us keep the music alive. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends. See you soon.